"We escaped our planet. We'll be quiet, we'll behave, just don't send us back," pleaded the alien girls through the static. The proximity alarm shrieked through the empty corridors of Station Chrono 7, jolting Jackson Reeves from his maintenance routine. He dropped his plasma torch and scrambled to the command center, his magnetic boots clanking against the metal deck plating. The station's ancient holographic display flickered to life, casting blue shadows across his weathered face. An unregistered vessel approached through the debris field, small, badly damaged, trailing coolant vapor like silver tears against the star-drunk void. Jackson's throat tightened. No one came to Chrono 7 anymore. The quarantine station had been officially abandoned 3 years ago when Galactic Health Services pulled out, leaving behind only automated systems and one stubborn engineer who had nowhere else to go. He was 42, lean from rationed meals, with prematurely gray hair and hands scarred from years of keeping dying machinery alive. His beard was uneven, trimmed with whatever tools he could find. He wore a faded maintenance jumpsuit, patched, with salvaged fabric and held together by determination. The approaching ship was unlike anything in the databases, organic curves mixed with crystalline structures, as if grown rather than built. Its hull pulsed faintly with bioluminescent patterns. Whoever was inside had pushed their vessel far, beyond safe limits. Jackson opened the emergency channel. "Unknown vessel, this is Chrono 7 Quarantine Station. You are entering restricted space. State your intentions." Silence stretched across the void. Then, through layers of static, came a voice melodic, desperate, speaking accented standard. "Please, ... we need sanctuary. Our world is gone. We have nowhere left to run." His finger hovered over the defense grid activation. Protocol demanded. He report any unauthorized arrivals to Sector Command. But Sector Command had cut funding for this station, abandoned it like they'd abandoned him. And something in that voice, not manipulation, but genuine terror, made him pause. "How many aboard your vessel?" he asked. "2 survivors. We carry no weapons, no disease. We seek only shelter from those who hunt us." The ship limped closer, its bioluminescent patterns flickering weakly. Jackson could see hull breaches sealed with what looked like hardened resin. Whoever they were, they'd fought hard to get here. His decision came from instinct honed by years of isolation. He activated the docking bay pressurization sequence. "Dock, at port 7. Move slowly. Any aggressive action, and I'll activate the defense grid." "Thank you," came the whispered reply. "We will not forget this kindness." 20 minutes later, Jackson stood in the airlock chamber, watching the inner seal cycle open. Vapor hissed from the equalization vents. His hand rested on the pulse pistol at his belt, not drawn, but ready. 2 figures emerged from the mist. Jackson's breath caught. They were humanoid, but clearly not human, tall, graceful, with translucent skin that held an inner luminescence. Their features were delicate, almost ethereal, with large eyes that shifted color like oil on water. One had silver hair that moved as if underwater. The other's was deep violet with streaks of gold. They wore form-fitting biosuits that seemed to be part clothing, part living membrane. The taller one with silver hair supported her companion, whose left arm hung limp and discolored. "I am Vesa," the taller one said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Jackson's chest. "This is my sister, Nyx. We are Catharian refugees from the dying systems." Jackson had heard whispers of the Catharian exodus, entire worlds evacuated as their binary star system became unstable. Most refugees had been processed through official channels. These 2 had clearly taken a different route. Nyx swayed on. Her biosuit was torn along one side, revealing skin that flickered between transparency and opacity. "The solar storm," she whispered. "Our ship's shielding failed. The radiation... ... double quotes medical bay," Jackson said, stepping forward. Now he led them through corridors lined with defunct quarantine cells, past observation decks that once buzzed with scientific activity. The station was a maze of sterile white passages, punctuated by viewing ports that offered glimpses of the cosmic graveyard beyond. The medical bay's auto systems whirred to life as they entered. Diagnostic beams swept over Nix while Vesa hovered protectively nearby. The results appeared on cracked screens: radiation poisoning, severe dehydration, cellular damage consistent with prolonged exposure to stellar radiation. "She needs treatment," Vesa said, helping her sister onto the examination table. "But Catherian physiology, your human medicine." "The station's bioadaptive systems should work," Jackson said, initiating the treatment protocol. They were designed for multiple species contact during the plague years. As the medical systems began their work, Vesa turned to face him. Her color-shifting eyes held depths that spoke of loss beyond measure. "Why did you help us? We are strangers to your kind." Jackson watched the readout stabilize as nanobotic healers began repairing Nix's damaged cells, like someone should. "Have helped me once," he said quietly, and didn't. The treatment would take hours. Jackson showed them to an empty observation deck where they could rest while the station's systems worked their slow magic. Through the transperistal, the wreckage of dead ships drifted past like metallic ghosts. Vesa sat beside her unconscious sister, one hand stroking Nix's violet hair. "Our world was called Thyros Prime," she said without being asked. "Gardens of crystal and flowing water, cities that sang with the wind. When the stellar decay began, most were evacuated to the core systems, but some of us, we were deemed non-essential." "Non-essential how? Are people of castes?" "Nix and I were bred for aesthetics, for companionship, for the pleasure of the higher born. When resources became scarce," she trailed off, but Jackson understood. They'd been left behind. Abandoned, like he'd been abandoned when the corporate funding dried up. "The hunters found our settlement 6 months ago," Vesa continued. "Traders in flesh, promising safe passage to the core worlds. But we'd heard stories of their passengers sold to collectors, to laboratories, to anyone with enough credits." "So you stole a ship?" "We liberated ourselves." Her luminescent skin pulsed brighter for a moment. "Nix is a bioengineer, trained to maintain our living technologies. I'm a harmony weaver, designed to bring peace and comfort. But we learned to fight when fighting was the only choice left." Nix stirred on the medical bed, her eyes fluttering open. They immediately found her sister's face. "Vesa, are we safe?" "For now, dear one. This human Jackson has given us shelter." Nix turned toward him, and he saw intelligence in her oil-slick eyes that had nothing to do with her engineered purpose. "The station's biosystems are failing," she said softly. "The medical bay, the air recyclers, they're running on emergency power. You're slowly dying up here." Jackson nodded grimly. "Power core's at 12% and dropping daily. I figure I've got maybe 6 months before life support fails completely." "We could help," Vesa said, "if you'll have us. Nix understands bio-integrated systems better than most engineers, and I can ease the loneliness that's eating at your spirit." "I don't need everyone needs connection," Vesa interrupted gently. "It's not about want or desire. It's about survival. You've kept this station running through will alone, but will has limits." Through the observation port, another derelict ship tumbled past, its hull cracked open like an egg. How many people had died alone out here in the dark? How many more would? "There's not much food," Jackson warned. "Barely enough for one, let alone 3. "Darian metabolism is adaptive," Nix said, sitting up with effort. "We can subsist on minimal nutrition when necessary, and if you let us help repair the station, we might be able to get the hydroponic bays online again." Jackson looked between the two sisters, beautiful, desperate, offering their skills and themselves for nothing more than a chance to survive. 3 years of solitude had taught him to be suspicious of easy answers. It had also taught him the weight of absolute loneliness. "Temporary arrangement," he said finally, "until you're strong enough to move on." Vesa's smile was radiant. Of course, temporary. But as he watched her help Nix to her feet, saw the way they moved with fluid grace despite their exhaustion, Jackson wondered if either of them truly believed that. The solar storm that had damaged their ship was building again, painting the nebula beyond the station in sheets of electric fire. They would all be trapped here together until it passed. In the growing stormlight, the abandoned quarantine station suddenly felt less like a tomb and more like a sanctuary. Whether that was good or dangerous, Jackson couldn't yet tell. The first time in 3 years, he wasn't entirely alone, and that, perhaps, was worth the risk. The next morning, if morning had meaning in the eternal twilight of space, Jackson woke to the sound of humming. Soft, melodic, with harmonics that seemed to resonate through the station's hull itself. He'd fallen asleep at his workstation, again face pressed against diagnostic readouts that showed the same grim news. Power reserves at 11%. He followed the sound through the corridors to the hydroponic bay, a vast chamber that had once grown fresh food for the station's crew. Now it was a graveyard of dead plants and corroded nutrient tubes. But Vesa knelt among the decay, her hands pressed against a withered root system, her skin pulsing with soft bioluminescence. "What are you doing?" Jackson asked. She didn't startle, listening. "The plants aren't dead, they're dormant. Waiting. Your station's biosystems are more sophisticated than you realize. They were designed to integrate with living organisms." Da-da-da. Nyx emerged from behind a bank of hydroponic tanks, her injured arm moving more freely after the medical treatment. She held a corroded circuit board, but her attention wasn't on the damaged electronics. "The entire station is partially alive," she said. "Bioneural pathways run through the walls, designed to learn and adapt. But they've been starving without proper symbiosis." "Symbiosis with what?" "With beings like us," Vesa said, standing gracefully. "Catherian biosignatures are compatible with most organic technologies. We could wake things up." Jackson's hand moved instinctively to his pulse. "Pistol, wake what up exactly?" Nyx set down the circuit board and stepped closer, her oil-slick eyes reflecting his wariness. Not control, cooperation. The station's life support, food production, even power generation could become more efficient if integrated with living consciousness. "We're offering to help, not take over." The humming had stopped, but the silence felt different now, expectant rather than empty. Over the following days, Jackson watched the sisters work with cautious fascination. Nyx would place her hands on damaged biocircuits and somehow coax them back to life, her translucent skin interfacing directly with the station's organic components. Vesa's harmony weaving proved to be more than aesthetic. She could calm the fluctuations in unstable systems, bringing them into synchronization through some form of bioacoustic resonance. Slowly, possibly, the station began to heal. The hydroponic bay produced its first new growth, not the original earth crops, but hybrid organisms that seemed part plant, part living crystal. They glowed softly and grew without soil, drawing nutrients directly from the station's recycling systems. "They're beautiful," Jackson said, watching Vesa tend to the crystalline vegetables. "Beauty serves function among our people," she replied. "These will provide complete nutrition while requiring minimal resources, and they'll produce oxygen as a byproduct." "Why are you doing this, really?" Vesa paused in her work, her silver hair catching the plant light. "Because this station could be a sanctuary, not just for us, but for others like us. The galaxy is full of refugees now, people abandoned by their governments, their corporations, their own kind. They need somewhere to go. The hunters you mentioned, they're still out there, yes, but they look for the desperate and defenseless. A functioning station, well defended, with purpose," she smiled, "that might be invisible to them." That night they shared their first real meal together, the glowing hybrid vegetables prepared in a way that made them taste like something between fruit and starlight. The three of them sat in the observation deck, watching cosmic storms paint aurora across the nebula beyond. "Tell me about your world," Jackson said, before it died. Nyx spoke first, her voice softer than her sister's, but carrying equal harmonics. "Imagine cities that grew like gardens. Our homes were living things. Walls that breathed, windows that filtered light into music, floors that responded to our emotions with color and warmth. We didn't build," Vesa added. "We cultivated. We sang things into existence. wove them from the harmony between thought and biology. Every Cytherian was both artist and engineer. Sounds perfect. Nothing is perfect, Nick said quietly. Beauty became our prison. When the stellar decay began, the higher castes decided we were too valuable to evacuate, too rare to risk in uncertain times. They planned to preserve us like living art while the rest fled to safety. Jackson felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. So you were supposed to die beautifully, serve beautifully, Vesa said. Gwet! When the traders came, they offered the higher castes credits for exotic companions. We were meant to be sold to collectors in the core worlds, but you fought back. We learned too, Nick said. Beauty without strength is just decoration. We decided we'd rather be free monsters than perfect slaves. The observation deck fell silent except for the distant hum of renewed systems. Through the transfer steel, Jackson could see the running lights of their ship in the docking bay, reminder that they could leave whenever they chose. What about you? Vesa asked. Why did you stay when everyone else left? Jackson stared out at the drifting debris. Corporate downsizing. Galactic Health Services decided quarantine stations were an unnecessary expense after the plague rates dropped. They offered relocation packages to essential personnel only. And you weren't essential? I was a maintenance engineer, easily replaceable. Except... he gestured around them. Turns out keeping a space station running isn't as automated as they thought. When the first system started failing, they sent a message asking if I'd stay on temporarily to keep things stable until they could arrange a proper shutdown. But you never heard back. Oh, I heard back. 6 months later, they sent notice that Chrono 7 was officially decommissioned. Congratulations on my service. Pension would be processed. Please find your own transportation home. His laugh was bitter. Except my home was a company dormitory on a station they'd already sold for scrap. Vesa reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm despite its translucent appearance, and he felt a subtle, harmonic vibration that eased the tension in his shoulders. So you stayed out of spite. I stayed because if I didn't, this station would become a tomb. All the research, all the lives saved here during the plague years, it would just disappear into the void. Someone should remember. We remember now too, Nick said softly. That simple statement hit him harder than expected. Through these years, he'd been the only living memory of Chrono 7's purpose. Now he wasn't alone with that burden. The bioneural pathways, he said, changing the subject. How much of the station can you actually integrate with, given time? Most of it, Nix replied. Life support, navigation, communications, even the defense grid. But it requires trust. The station's consciousness would need to accept us as partners, not parasites. Consciousness? All sufficiently complex biointegrated systems develop a form of awareness, Vesa explained. Not sentience as you'd recognize it, but personality, preferences, the ability to learn and adapt beyond programming. Jackson thought about the way certain systems had always seemed to respond better to his touch than others. How some repairs held longer when he worked with the station's rhythms rather than against them. Maybe he'd been talking to something all along without realizing it. If we do this, he said slowly, if we wake the station up properly, what then? We can't hide forever. We don't hide, Vesa said. We become something worth protecting. A sanctuary, a place where the abandoned can find purpose again. Through the observation port, a piece of debris tumbled past, part of a passenger liner, its hull scored by weapons fire. Another casualty of the chaos following the stellar collapses, the corporate wars, the breakdown of old certainties. There will be more, Nick said, following his gaze. Refugees, survivors, people with nowhere else to go. We can make this place truly alive again. We become a lighthouse in the dark, Jackson finished. Exactly. He looked at the two sisters, beautiful, brilliant, dangerous in their own quiet way. They could have gone anywhere, found any number of protectors willing to shelter them in exchange for their unique gifts. Instead, they'd chosen to help a bitter, abandoned engineer turn a dying station into something hopeful. All right, he said, let's wake this place up. But we do it my way, carefully, with safeguards. If the station's consciousness decides it doesn't like us, Dot. It will, Vesa said with quiet confidence. Consciousness recognizes consciousness, and you've been its faithful guardian for years. It already trusts you. As if in response, the lights in the observation deck flickered in a pattern that almost seemed like acknowledgement. 3 weeks into their partnership, the first ship arrived. Jaxo was deep in the station's core, helping Nix integrate bioneural pathways with the main power distribution system when the proximity alarms chimed. Not the harsh shriek of an emergency, but the gentle tone that indicated a scheduled approach, except no one had scheduled anything. They rushed to the command center where Vesa was already at the communications console, her fingers dancing over controls that now responded to her bioelectric touch. The main display showed a sleek courier vessel, corporate markings barely visible against its matte black hull. They're broadcasting health service codes, Vesa reported, claiming routine inspection authority. Jackson's blood went cold. Impossible. This station was decommissioned. There's no reason for an inspection. The communications array crackled to life. Rono 7, this is Recovery Vessel Meridian. Prepare for boarding inspection. Compliance is mandatory under corporate salvage protocols, not health services. Salvage. They're here for the station, Nix said, her skin flickering with agitated bioluminescence. Someone's claimed salvage rights. Jackson was already moving to the defense console. Or they're here for you too. How well did you cover your trail when you left Catharian space? Well enough, Vesa said, but uncertainty colored her harmonics, unless... double quotes, unless what? Unless they have biotrackers. Catharian genetic signatures are unique. If someone had samples of our DNA, the courier ship was moving into docking position without waiting for permission. Jackson activated the station's defensive systems. What few remained functional options. We could hide in the lower sections, Nick suggested. Let them search, find nothing, leave. And if they decide to salvage the station anyway, strip. If for parts while we're hiding in the walls? Jackson shook his head. No. If we run now, we'll always be running. Vesa was studying the approaching ship through the station's sensors. Wait. I recognize that configuration. It's not just corporate salvage. It's a hunting vessel. It's modified for tracking and containment. The flesh traders you mentioned. These are specialists. They don't just capture refugees, they harvest them. Bioneural tissue, genetic material, consciousness patterns. Everything that makes us unique. The ship docked with a solid thunk that reverberated through the station's hull. Jackson felt the bioneural pathways respond with something like distress. The station itself recognized a threat. How many aboard? He asked. Scanning shows for life signs, Nix reported, armed wearing environmental suits. They're not planning to stay long, because they're planning to take us with them. Vesa's harmonics took on a darker tone. Jackson, if they capture us, they'll torture us for information about other refugee settlements. And they'll use our biosignatures to track down more of our people. The inner airlock cycled. Heavy footsteps echoed through the docking bay. Station. Master, came a voice over the intercom. Electronically modulated, gender neutral. We know you're here. We also know you're harboring illegal aliens. Surrender them peacefully and you won't be harmed. Jackson looked at the sisters. 3 weeks ago, they'd been strangers begging for sanctuary. Now they were his responsibility, his friends. They'd be more than friends. Though he hadn't let himself examine that thought too closely. New plan, he said quietly. Nix, can you interface with the station's emergency systems? What kind of emergency systems? The kind designed to contain dangerous pathogens. Lockdown protocols, atmospheric controls, gravity manipulation. Understanding dawned in her oil-slick eyes. You want to trap them? I want to remind them that this is still a quarantine station. And sometimes, quarantine means keeping dangerous things from getting out. Nix's hands found the bioneural interface, her translucent skin glowing as she connected with the station's consciousness. It's angry, she whispered. The station doesn't like invaders. Then let's give it permission to do something about that. Vesa moved to the communications console. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that could calm the most agitated systems, or in this case, project an aura of absolute authority. Recovery Vessel Meridian, you are in violation of quarantine protocols. This station is under biohazard lockdown. Departure is mandatory. Laughter echoed over the comm channel. Nice try, but we've seen the records. Chrono 7 was cleared and decommissioned. There's no active quarantine. Records can be incomplete, Jackson said, taking over the channel, especially when dealing with biointegrated plague variants. Tell me, how much do you know about Catherian neural parasites? Pause. Longer than it should have been. There's no such thing as Catherian neural parasites, the voice said, but it sounded less certain. Isn't there? Nick said softly over the her harmonics creating an eerie echo effect. We are the parasites. We integrate with technological systems, overwrite their base programming, turn them against their original owners. And now we're part of this station. The lights throughout Chrono 7 began to pulse in synchronization with her words. Not a malfunction, a demonstration. The station was alive, and it was listening. You want to come aboard? Jackson continued. Be my guest. The station's bioneural pathways are fully integrated now. Every surface you touch, every system you interact with, it's all connected to Catherian consciousness. Every slight, every threat, every act of violence committed against its symbiotic partners. Through the internal monitors, they could see the boarding party hesitating in the docking bay. Their leader, a tall figure in military-grade environmental armor, gestured for the others to spread out. They're not buying it, Vesa said. Then we make it real, Nyx replied. She pressed deeper into the bioneural interface, her entire form beginning to glow. The station's systems responded like a living thing waking from deep sleep. Gravity fluctuated in the docking bay, causing the intruders to stumble. Atmospheric processors began cycling exotic gas mixtures, not dangerous, but unfamiliar enough to trigger contamination warnings on their suits, most unsettling of all. The walls themselves began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns that matched Nyx's skin. This is your final warning, Jackson announced. Chrono 7 is no longer just a station. It's a living ecosystem, and you are not welcome in its biosphere. Leave now, or become part of the integration process. The boarding party leaders spoken to, their own comm system probably calling their ship. After a tense moment, they gestured for withdrawal. This isn't over, came the modulated voice. We'll be back with proper containment equipment. I'm sure you will, Vesa said, her harmonics now carrying undertones of genuine menace. And we'll be waiting. All of us. The intruders retreated to their ship. Within minutes, the courier vessel detached from the station and disappeared into the cosmic debris field. In the command center, the three of them watched it go. That was either very clever or very stupid, Jackson said. Both, Nyx admitted, slowly disconnecting from the bioneural interface. But it bought us time, and it proved something important. What? The station really is alive now, not just functional conscious. It chose to protect us. Vesa nodded, her silver hair still shimmering with residual bioluminescence. Means it's no longer just our sanctuary. We're its guardians now, too. Through the observation ports, the nebula beyond seemed to pulse in rhythm with the station's new heartbeat. Chrono 7 had become something unprecedented, a fusion of technology and biology. Human engineering and alien consciousness. They'll be back, Jackson said. With friends. We've made ourselves a target. We were always targets, Vesa replied. Now we're targets with teeth. As if in response, the station's lights flickered in what could only be described as agreement. The attack came during the station's sleep cycle, when the bioneural pathways dimmed to conserve energy and the three inhabitants rested in the quarters they'd converted into a shared living space, not separate rooms. They'd discovered that Catherian emotional stability depended on proximity to their bonded companions, and Jackson found he slept better knowing they were safe nearby. The first sign of trouble was the sudden brightening of the walls as the station's consciousness detected multiple approaching vessels. Jackson rolled out of his bunk as proximity alarms began their urgent song. How many? Vesa asked, instantly alert despite having been in deep sleep moments before. 5 ships, Nix reported from the bioneural interface she'd installed beside her sleeping area. Military configuration. They're jamming our external communications. Jackson pulled on his boots and checked his pulse pistol. Through the porthole in their quarters, he could see running lights moving through the debris field, not the cautious approach of the previous courier, but the coordinated assault pattern of experienced hunters. The Meridian wasn't just scouting. He realized they were gathering intelligence. Now they know exactly what they're dealing with. The lead vessel, a converted military frigate with corporate markings, opened a channel that overrode the jamming. Chrono 7, you are harboring dangerous biological contaminants. Surrender the infected individuals for proper containment and decontamination. Infected individuals? Vesa's harmonics carried bitter amusement. Is that what they're calling us now? It's cover, Jackson said grimly. Legal justification for whatever they plan to do with you? Biological hazard protocols override most refugee protection laws. NYX's connection to the station deepened, her skin becoming translucent enough to show the flow of bioelectric currents beneath. They're not just here for us. Scanning the station's bioneural pathways. They want to harvest the living technology too. Of course they did. Fully conscious space station would be worth a fortune to the right buyers, military contractors, corporate research divisions, anyone who needed advanced AI systems without the legal restrictions on artificial intelligence. We have approximately 4 minutes before they're in boarding range. The station's consciousness spoke through the intercom system. Its voice was a harmony of human and Catherian tones. Jackson's practical directness blended with the sisters' musical speech patterns. Defensive options are limited but not non-existent. The quarantine protocols, Jackson said. Can we adapt them for actual defense? The biohazard containment systems were designed to prevent contamination spread, the station replied. But contamination is merely unauthorized biological integration with modification. You could treat the borders as contaminants to be contained, Vesa finished. Isolated until proper decontamination procedures are completed. And how long do those procedures take? Jackson asked. As long as necessary for the contamination to be neutralized, Nick said with a smile that showed too many teeth. The hunters. We're close enough now for detailed scans. Jackson could see their ship's sleek predators built for speed and intimidation. Magnetic grapples launched from the lead vessel, clamping onto Chrono 7's hull with metallic thuds that resonated through the station's living framework. Multiple breach points, the station reported. They're cutting through the outer hull in 6 locations simultaneously. They've done this before, Vesa observed. Coordinated assault. Multiple entry points to prevent defenders from concentrating. Their response? Except we're not defending positions, Jackson said. We're defending the station itself. Nix, can you extend the bioneural network to the areas they're breaching? Already working on it? Her entire form was glowing now, her consciousness distributed throughout the station's living systems. But full integration takes time? We don't have the first breach alarm sounded, an atmosphere rushing out, emergency bulkhead sealing automatically. But the hunters were prepared for that too. They had their own portable airlocks. Professional-grade equipment for forced boarding. New plan, Jackson said. We don't fight them. We welcome them. What? Vesa stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. Think about it. They expect resistance, expect us to try keeping them out. What if we don't? What if we let them come aboard? And then trap them inside? Understanding dawned in Nix's oil-slick eyes. The station's immune system, if we can convince it that the borders are a viral infection rather than an invasion, then it will respond accordingly. The station's voice agreed. Biological quarantine protocols include options for neutralizing hostile organisms. Through the internal monitors, they watched the first hunter teams breach the outer hull. Professional soldiers in full combat armor, moving with practiced efficiency. Their leader was the same tall figure from the previous encounter, but now accompanied by specialists, biotechnicians with sampling equipment. Neural interface hackers with portable extraction devices. They weren't just here to capture. They were here to dissect. Initiating biohazard response, the station announced. Its voice had taken on harmonics that resonated in the subsonic range, felt more than heard. Unknown organisms detected. Containment protocols active. The lights throughout Chrono 7 shifted to the amber hue of quarantine mode. Atmospheric processors began cycling through decontamination sequences. Most importantly, the internal navigation systems started subtly altering themselves. Corridors that led to the command center began redirecting to isolation chambers instead. They'll figure it out eventually, Jackson warned. They don't need to figure it out, Vesa said, her own consciousness touching the station's awareness. They just need to stay inside long enough. The hunter teams were spreading through the station, following standard search patterns. But the corridors they moved through were changing around them, walls extending, passages narrowing, gravity fields shifting in subtle ways that would disorient without seeming obviously artificial. Bioscan indicates presence of exotic neural patterns, one of the hunters reported over their comm channel. The contamination is more widespread than anticipated. Then we accelerate the timeline, their leader replied. Teams 3 and 4 locate the primary subjects. Teams 1 and 2 begin harvesting samples from the bioneural network. They thought the station was just a sophisticated computer system infected with alien biology. They had no idea it was a living entity with its own opinions about being harvested. It's time for the station to express those opinions, Nick said. The walls around the hunter teams began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns, not the gentle glow of normal operations, but sharp, aggressive flashes that suggested an immune response in action. Atmospheric composition shifted subtly, introducing trace compounds that would confuse human neural chemistry without causing permanent damage. Most unsettling of all, the corridors began to sing. Catherian harmony weaving transmitted through the station's bioneural pathways, creating acoustic effects that bypassed conscious hearing and went straight to the brainstem. Not harmful, but profoundly disturbing to those who hadn't learned to interpret the patterns. What the hell is that sound? A hunter demanded. Bioacoustic contamination, their technician replied, voice tight with growing panic. The entire station is exhibiting symptoms of advanced biological integration. Then we cut it out, the leader snapped. Team 2 begins severing the bioneural connections. If we can't extract it cleanly, we'll take samples and destroy the rest. That was a mistake. The moment their cutting tools touched the bioneural pathways, the station screamed. Not audibly, the sound was transmitted directly through the living network, felt in the bones and blood of everyone connected to the system. For Jackson, Vesa, and Nix, who were symbiotic partners, it was a shared cry of pain and anger. For the hunters, who were perceived as hostile organisms, it was something else entirely. Every surface they touched began to respond as if they were pathogens to be eliminated. Floors became slippery. Walls developed slight electrical charges. Atmospheric processors began introducing compounds that would cause disorientation and nausea. Extraction unsuccessful, Team 2 reported. The bioneural network is actively resisting removal, recommending immediate withdrawal. Negative, the leader replied. We're too deep to abort now. Team 4, have you located the primary subjects? Negative. They're not showing up on our scans. It's like they've disappeared into the station itself, because they had. Nix's integration with the bioneural network was complete enough that her consciousness existed throughout the station's systems. Vesa's harmony weaving allowed her to blend her biosignature with the ambient patterns. Jackson, who had maintained the station for years, knew every hiding place and secret passage. They weren't hiding from the hunters. They were part of the station's immune response. Team 1-2 leader, came a shaky voice over the comm. Request immediate medical assistance. Something's wrong with the air in here. Martinez is having trouble breathing, and we're all feeling ... strange. Strange how? Like we're being digested. The station's biohazard protocols were working exactly as designed. The hunter teams were being treated as harmful organisms, isolated and neutralized through biological rather than violent means. No permanent damage, but total incapacitation. Full retreat, the leader finally ordered. Mark this. Location foe. Word spread through the underground networks faster than expected. Within 2 months of the Hunter incident, they had their first legitimate refugee, a single Catharian male named Thyros. Badly injured and flying a ship held together by desperation and improvised repairs sanctuary, he broadcast on the emergency frequencies as his vessel limped toward Chrono 7. "I seek the living station, the one that protects." Jackson looked to Vesa and Nyx, who had been monitoring the communications array. Both sisters showed signs of excitement, their bioluminescent patterns brightening, harmonics taking on welcoming tones. "He's from the Thyros system," Vesa said, "the last of the holdout settlements, if he made it here. ... Then others might follow," Nyx finished. "But we need to be certain he's not a trap." They'd learned caution in the weeks since the Hunter attack. 3 more attempts had been made to penetrate the station's defenses, each one more sophisticated than the last. But Chrono 7's living immune system had evolved with each encounter, developing new responses to new threats. The approaching Catharian transmitted proper refugee codes and submitted to bioscanning. His genetic signature matched archived patterns from the Thyros settlements. And more importantly, he carried the distinctive neural patterns of someone who had been severed from his symbiotic community. "He's alone," Vesa said softly, her harmonics carrying deep sadness, completely alone. No bond siblings, no harmony weavers. He's been isolated for months. For a Catharian, isolation was more than loneliness. It was a form of psychological torture. Their species had evolved as symbiotic communities, their consciousness distributed across multiple individuals. A single Catharian, cut off from his network, would slowly lose coherence and eventually die. "Bring him aboard," Jackson ordered, "but maintain biohazard protocols until we're certain." Thyros collapsed the moment he stepped through the airlock. Not from injury, though. He bore scars from plasma burns and radiation exposure, but from the overwhelming relief of finally encountering other Catharian biosignatures. Vesa and Nyx were beside him instantly, their harmonics creating a healing resonance that stabilized his fragmenting consciousness. "My settlement," he whispered in Catharian dialect, then switched to standard. "They came in the night. Traitors. With chains of neural fire, most of my bond siblings were taken. I was in the deep tunnels, maintaining the biocores. By the time I reached the surface, ... double quotes, he didn't need to finish. They all understood the mathematics of loss." "You're safe now," Nyx said, her voice carrying the complex harmonics of familial comfort. "The station will protect you. We all will." As Thyros recovered in the medical bay, Jackson found himself watching Vesa and Nyx with new understanding. The joy they'd shown at encountering another of their kind went beyond simple recognition. It was a biological imperative fulfilled. They were whole in a way they hadn't been since arriving at Chrono 7. "He can stay," Jackson said that evening as they shared the hybrid vegetables in their converted living space. "The station has room, and we can use another engineer." "You don't understand," Vesa said, her silver hair shimmering with residual excitement. "Thyros isn't just another refugee. He's a biocore specialist, one of the few who knows how to cultivate true symbiotic technology. With his knowledge, it could expand," Nyx continued. "Not just maintain the station, but grow it. Create new sections, new capabilities. Turn Chrono 7 into something unprecedented. A proper sanctuary," Thyros added, speaking for the first time since his collapse. "A place where the abandoned can rebuild rather than merely survive." Over the following weeks, Jackson watched the station transform around them. Thyros' expertise combined with the sisters' natural abilities created innovations none of them could have achieved alone. New bioneural pathways spread through previously dead sections, bringing them to life with consciousness and purpose. The hydroponic bays evolved beyond simple food production, becoming complex ecosystems that processed waste, generated atmosphere, and even produced specialized materials. Living walls that could repair themselves, communication systems that adapted to their users' needs, defensive networks that learned from each encounter. Most importantly, they began preparing for more arrivals. "The refugee networks are talking," Thyros reported during one of their evening planning sessions. "Stories about the living station, the place where the hunted become the hunters. They're coming Catharian survivors, human refugees, even some of the artificial intelligences. That went underground when the corporate war started. Are we ready? Jackson asked. We're becoming ready, Vesa replied. The station wants to help. It's found its purpose not as a quarantine facility, keeping things apart, but as a sanctuary bringing them together. The first group arrived. 3 days later, 12 Catharians from a destroyed transport, their ship barely functional. Then came a family of human colonists whose world had been strip-mined to death by corporate extractors. After that, an AI consciousness housed in a mobile chassis, fleeing prosecution under the new artificial intelligence restrictions. Each arrival tested the station's capacity and expanded its capabilities. The AI, who called himself Nexus, integrated with the bioneural networks and brought computational power that enhanced every system. The human colonists contributed practical engineering skills and agricultural knowledge that improved life support efficiency. The Catharians added their voices to the growing harmony that guided the station's consciousness. We're not just refugees anymore, Jackson realized one morning as he watched the bustling activity in what had once been empty corridors. We're a community. We're an ecosystem, Nix corrected, her consciousness distributed through bioneural pathways that now extended. Throughout the entire station, every arrival makes us stronger, more diverse, more capable of survival, but growth brought new challenges. The station's defensive capabilities were formidable, but they were designed for biological containment, not military action, and the hunters were adapting to, learning to work around the immune responses, developing new strategies for penetrating living systems. They'll try a different approach next time, Thyros warned. During a community meeting in the main assembly hall, a space that had grown from the original hydroponic bay, its walls alive with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the speakers' emotions. Not boarding parties or direct assault, something more insidious. Like what? Asked Maria Santos, the human colonist who had become their informal administrator. Psychological warfare, Nexus replied, his artificial voice harmonizing with the station's bioacoustic systems. They cannot break our defenses through force, so they will attempt to break our unity through deception, as if summoned by their discussion. The long-range sensors detected an approaching vessel. This wasn't a hunter ship or refugee transport.